Welcome to a new edition of South Sound Business Report. Today, from the banks of Eld Inlet, we're looking at shellfish. Stay tuned. Hello, and thanks for joining us. Thank you also to Rainier Connect, a locally based telecommunications company that's sponsoring today's episode. Going back countless generations, these saltwater inlets of South Puget Sound have supported families really back to the days of Northwest Indians. In 2011, it generated a $107 million industry as farmers, yes, farmers, are farming mussels, clams, and oysters. Business Examiner Associate Editor Holly Smith-Peterson brings us this closer look.
Today, we're out at Chelsea Farms near Steamboat Island, close to Olympia. I'm talking with Tom Bloomfield, who's the manager here at the production site. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, Holly.
Tell us a little bit about Chelsea Farms. How long has it been in operation, and what exactly do you do here?
Chelsea Farms was started in 1986, husband and wife team, John and Linda Lentz. We farm 3 different species of shellfish: manila clams, Pacific oysters, and gooey duck clams here.
Okay. Now, the gooey duck piece of it is the largest part of your business?
I would say gooey duck is comprised of the largest part of our business, yeah.
And tell us a little bit about that. What piece of it do you have here? Do you grow them? Do you ship them?
We grow them here and we harvest them. We farm about 50 acres of tideland total. The gooey duck are planted, reared, and harvested here, and then they're shipped to our sister company in Tacoma, where they're repackaged, put on an airplane that night, and they'll be at their final destination by the next day.
And where's the primary market for gooey duck these days?
It's split between China. A lot of them go to China, and the domestic markets both in Los Angeles and in New York.
Okay. And about how many tons or pounds do you sell, or do you produce?
Depends on the year, but we'll do anywhere from 50,000 pounds of gooey duck to 200,000 pounds of gooey duck a year.
Okay, and the oysters, that's a growing part of your business as well. Tell us how that's been doing.
Well, the oyster business is on fire. I think we're in the middle of a renaissance for half-shell oysters, in the same way that it happened with coffee or with beer some years ago. People want a variety of oysters, and we're here and we're ready to provide them.
Okay, and where did those go? Who are your main consumers?
Most of our oysters actually go to San Francisco, down to California, but we also sell in Oregon, we sell in New York, we sell in Nevada, Chicago, so they get around.
Okay, and then the clams, how is that doing?
Clams are pretty steady. We farm the same number of clams that we have for probably the last 5 or 6 years.
Okay, and can you give us some numbers on that?
Yeah, we'll farm, maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 pounds of clams.
Okay, and let's start at the beginning with the seeds. Where do you get those to do the farming?
We buy from a variety of sources. We don't produce our own seed here, but we buy from shellfish hatcheries. There aren't that many of them around, but we buy a little bit of our seed from each of them.
Okay, and then as far as just the transportation, you have the production here, you box them up. How do you get them to the final destination?
Well, some of our oysters go out via air freight for the East Coast. On the West Coast down to the San Francisco market, there's a freight truck that meets us here at the farm, picks it up, and they'll be in San Francisco within 2 days.
Now, as far as the industry, the shellfish industry as a whole for Puget Sound, it's enormous here. What do you see, how is it important as far as the local economy?
It's hugely important in this area. Thurston, Mason County, those economies really rely on natural resource-based jobs. In Olympia, you've also, of course, got the state capitol, which is in the state offices, which is a huge employer. But when you get rural, when you get outside of the city of Olympia within Thurston County, a lot of the jobs available are resource-based jobs, and that's absolutely the case in Mason County. And shellfish is a resource-based job, and we produce something, and I take great pride in that. It's nice to know that here in America we can still produce something.
Exactly, and people can buy local.
People can buy local, yeah.
Now, where do you distribute besides restaurants?
Fish wholesalers, brokers, and then they will turn around and repackage and ship out to the retailers.
So there's a ton of jobs between just the production jobs and then on
yeah.
on the user end, on the restaurant.
You've got all the jobs in the hatchery. You've got the production jobs here on the farm. We'll put on maybe upwards of 20 part-time employees in the summer. That's our planting season. You've got trucking, air freight companies, freight forwarders. You've got the fish wholesalers. You've got the restaurants, and right on down to the consumer.
Okay. And which parts of the industry are ripe for growth in the next 2 to 5 years?
All of it. We could grow if if it wasn't for the environment with permitting and the difficulties we have permitting our farm sites. We could grow exponentially. The market demand is there. All we need is some governmental cooperation, and we could really have a win-win. It's great for business. It's great for the environment.
So you said it was particularly difficult to get permits for gooey ducks.
Yeah, it's really hard to get a permit for a new gooey duck site currently.
And clams as well?
Clams, yes, not as difficult, but clams or oysters, yes, certainly it's difficult for us to.
Well, what are some of the challenges involved there?
Well, you're just dealing with so many different agencies, as well as different citizens groups and municipalities. There's only limited acreage that we can farm because of water quality. Mm-hmm. So we're really limited in the area that we can work. And then when you add on to that, we deal with the Army Corps of Engineers, we deal with the Department of Ecology, the Department of Natural Resources, we'll deal with the county.
And you said even for a small operation, even the neighbors can be a problem?
Sometimes, yeah. You know, we get along real well with most of our neighbors, but there's a few that don't like to see a working waterway at all.
Well, and it's not just, and I'm not speaking of Chelsea Farms necessarily, but other
Industry-wide.
private, yes, industry-wide, where something about the look of the place and
yeah, they don't like the aesthetics of our farming operation, or if we're noisy, or if there's lights. You know, a lot of times in the wintertime the lowest low tide is in the middle of the night. So we work nights in the winter, and I understand I wouldn't want somebody flashing lights around my house in the middle of the night either, but we try to be aware of that.
Yeah, and you're willing to work with them.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the piece
Absolutely.
of it.
I just want to be able to do my job, and believe me, I have no interest in shining lights in people's house or being an obnoxious or terrible neighbor.
Well, let's talk about some of the larger challenges to the shellfish industry as well. The ocean acidity, that has been coming up as a huge problem. Tell me what's going on there.
Well, they have direct evidence that with the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere is causing the pH of our oceans to change, and it really affects shellfish because when they're very tiny and they're first forming their shells, if you have a higher acidity in the water, it actually dissolves their shells and kills them. So what that means to me is that I may have more trouble getting seed from the hatcheries, and if I don't plant seed, all the shellfish we harvest, we plant. There's nothing naturally occurring. We plant them just like you would corn, and we see it all the way through the crop cycle. So if we can't get that seed, we're out of business. Right. So it's worrisome.
So are you looking at any types of changes in particular to deal with acidity here? Even though you don't have the seeds, there might be some other water quality issues that I think you had mentioned, that any kind of changes that you're looking at making?
To deal with ocean acidification, there's very little that we can do here. On the hatchery end, they're able to actually manipulate the pH of the water by, adding certain things. They can change the pH just like you do in a swimming pool or something. And so they can really kind of keep an eye on that. What happens out here is at the whims of nature. Once I plant my seed out here, there's only so much we can do.
Okay. And are you looking to expand your own business as far as maybe mussels or other kinds of shellfish? If you could have more land, would you do that?
Yeah, I think I would. The opportunity is there, and I firmly believe that what we do is a net gain for the environment. Shellfish sequester carbon. Shellfish remove excess nutrients from the water. So at the end of the day, I can create jobs, and I can have a job doing what I love to do. I love to be outside. And it's good for the economy, it's good for the environment. More would be better.
Okay. Now, later on, we are going to Zins, and I wanted to ask you, I know you've been there, and the importance of shellfish to the restaurant industry. Can you talk about your experience?
I think it's hugely important. Like I say, there's a lot of people that are employed. Like I say, we're in the middle of a renaissance, especially with half-shell oysters. And oyster bars 10 years ago would have 3, 4, or 5 different varieties of oysters, and now they have 50 on the menu. And they're hugely popular, and people love to go and eat half-shell oysters. When you think about how many people are employed and how many new oyster bars are popping up across the nation, I mean, you can go to a fresh oyster bar in the Midwest now, and that wasn't always the case. So, hugely important. Shellfish are a really healthy source of protein. So there's only so many sources of protein in the world. And shellfish are really high in omega-3s and all the good stuff, all the good fat. Yeah, absolutely good for you. Trace minerals, all of that. So they're healthy, and like I say, they're also good for the economy.
And pretty easy to cultivate.
Well, we toil endlessly, but yeah.
What's the hardest part about your business, about the cultivation of it?
I would say that we have to work outside, so we work in all conditions. You know, if it's stormy and awful and sleet, like I say, we work in the middle of the night all winter, and the schedule's awful. Every other week we work days, and then we work nights because we work around the low tide schedule. So every other week there's a set of low tides, and they start at a different time every night because they get later and later. So one week I'll work days, the next week I'll go to work at 11 o'clock, starting at 11 o'clock p.m., and then the following night it'll be 11:45, and the following night it'll be 12:15, and you cannot sleep.
Does it take a certain kind of person to work in this industry as far as the production end?
Yeah, I think so. I think you have to really enjoy being outdoors, and you have to not be afraid to be wet. So.
Okay, well, I think one thing our viewers might like to know is, you know, the gooey duck. It's not a familiar shellfish to most people. Obviously, there's a huge market in China, but what do you do with it? How do you cook it?
Oh, there's a host of ways to cook it. Gooey duck tartare, which is raw gooey duck sliced thin. The sushi market is huge. In China, they eat it in a hot pot, a lot. I love gooey duck fritters. It makes really great ceviche and a really great paella. So you're going to get a chance to try some of those at Zins. She does a great job with the shellfish.
So there's clearly a market niche here in the restaurant industry for gooey duck restaurants.
Yeah, I think there is. Yeah, we don't sell a whole lot locally. We do sell some, but I think the market demand will come up here domestically even more than it is already.
Very good. Well, Tom Bloomfield of Chelsea Farms, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for coming out, Holly.
Here in Tacoma, there's a unique telecommunications company that knows how to serve their local community.
We believe in doing business locally, giving back, and connecting local businesses. And with Rainier Connect being a local provider, we feel it's essential for us to do business with them.
Rainier Connect, one company working to grow your business or to simply help you connect.
Thank you for choosing Rainier Connect.
Thank you, Holly. Prompted by the growing U.S. and international market demand for Washington shellfish, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has started a shellfish initiative. Shellfish aquaculture, underwater farming if you will, requires clean water. And that's not just the elimination of shore-based pollutions, but also a restored balance to the great oceans and saltwater around the globe. This is Hedia Edelsman.
Thank you.
Executive Policy Advisor with the Washington State Department of Ecology. Now, I'm told that your portfolio includes something called ocean acidification.
That's correct.
What is ocean acidification?
Ocean acidification is really changes in the chemistry of the ocean that has been happening for quite a while, but I think it has been discovered more recently. It's almost like a recent science. Our oceanographers starting to notice some changes in the coral, especially started with the coral reef, and seeing that some of the coral reef are being impacted, like eaten up by some of the water. As they start analyzing the chemistry, they're finding more and more that there is a change in the chemistry of the ocean, and that the ocean water is really moving more and more toward a acidic.
And do we know why?
Yes, one of the big reasons that now is being documented by a lot of scientists is the absorption by the ocean of the greenhouse gas emissions, especially the carbon dioxide that is emitted from fossil fuel burning. At one time, and it's at least 30% of that is being absorbed by the ocean. At one time, everybody thought that's a really good idea. Ocean is going to save us, and we don't need to do that much. We could even inject a lot of it into the ocean, but what we're finding out is there's, of course, now this side effect that is changing the chemistry of the oceans, and not only in Washington, the Pacific, but throughout many of the oceans around the world.
Our program today is about the shellfish business, the industry. How does this problem with the ocean acidification, how does that impact shellfish farming?
Well, you know, normally the ocean water is more alkaline, and of course within the ocean there are some, you know, calcium elements that shellfish industry uses, and the sands and so on to form their shell. What's happening is as the water becomes more acidic, is actually dissolving or not, or preventing some of the baby oysters from actually forming their shell.
Okay.
And it's like just a chemistry, an acid that actually dissolves a calcium. So in 2005, the shellfish industry discovered that they were seeing billions of baby larvae dying. And at that time, they weren't sure what was causing that until they had conversation with oceanographers that were starting them to link the change in the chemistry of the oceans.
What is the approach to understand and then hopefully resolve the issue? I don't think there's a blue ribbon panel that's in
Yes,
place?
the governor, when she unveiled the Washington shellfish industry initiative, she also created a blue ribbon panel, which has some of the really best scientists that we have in Washington, and also we have from Oregon some leaders, policy leaders from tribes, local government, state, and so on, and to actually come together and first of all make sure we have a full understanding of what the science is telling us right now. So what are the drivers? What's causing this problem? Identifying the gaps. In many cases we don't know enough, and then recommend some additional action for like research and monitoring, but also looking at those drivers and trying to isolate the ones that we can do something about them, especially like nutrient added, you know, discharged into our marine waters. So the panel will be looking at what action can we take to prevent the nutrient from entering, to mitigate them, but also even more importantly, I think there is some technological changes, there are some operational changes that industry may adopt, and I think the panel is going to look at that also.
I have the feeling that we're just in the foreword of a very large book that is still being written in terms of learning about this. Thank you. We'll have to come back to this subject.
Thank you.
Hadiya Edelsman, Executive Policy Advisor for the Department of Ecology. Holly Smith-Peterson now takes us back to look at some of the premier examples of Washington shellfish. She's followed them now from the tidal waters to the dinner plate. Let's see what's cooking.
And now from the shellfish farm to the restaurant. We're here in Shelton now with Zin Dwelly, owner of Zin's Clam and Oyster House. Welcome, Zin.
Thank you for being here.
You came from Vietnam.
Yes.
And how did you come to be in the United States, and Shelton in particular?
I was married to a soldier, and I came over here with 4-month-old baby boy. He was born in Vietnam, came over here 4 months. And because when their father, you know, done with the tour of duty, I can't leave because I already pregnant. They won't let me fly long, you know, so I stay behind. Because also the paperwork and stuff, it's hard to do all the legal paper to get here. Takes a long time.
But you came here, and then you got a job with Taylor Shellfish?
Came here in 1970, so a couple of years I learned English, second language and all that, and then I get bored, so I trying to find a job, and that's what I did. Second oyster.
Shucking oysters?
Yeah, but the first day, I don't even know what the oyster looked like, you know. And the men who to teach me, I look at so, why did it look like a rock to me?
But you obviously learned
Yeah,
well.
I learned, yeah, first day, I think I learned get into the shell. So I got the whole idea how to get the oyster out of the shell. So I got 8 gallons
Oh my goodness.
oyster meat. I was so happy, you know.
Well, obviously you're good at it because you've been the 5-time oyster shucking champion for the West Coast region, is that right?
Yes, and right now, I mean, they have a lot more people faster than me now. So
yeah, but still, you've been...
they're young, they're faster, so I'm retired before they beat me.
And then what else did you do for Taylor Shellfish?
Well, I used to do retail store at Taylor and shuck special oyster, like real small oyster for different restaurants. When I first worked there, which is in the plant, Taylor plant, 16 years ago.
Right, and
So,
then you started cooking for the
Yeah,
staff and
so
special
to cook
occasions.
for the office lunch, and then first we start cooking. Every day I'll do maybe, if I do chicken curry, I do, you know,
But
something.
you did a lot of seafood too.
Yeah, yeah.
And was that recipes from Vietnam or things that you just made up?
Well, by memory, yeah, I made it up, but sometime I do, because we work with seafood all the time. You don't want to eat seafood all the time, so I try to do like chicken curry or meat or something different, you know.
So how did you get the idea to open a restaurant, and a shellfish restaurant at that?
Well, the owner of this restaurant used to call Cafe Luna, and a friend of mine, well, I run the retail store with my friend, so every day, every week he come in and he goes, hey Sin, you good cook, why don't you take over the restaurant? And I say, well, I don't know anything about the restaurant, run the restaurant, but I can cook, maybe that would be good. And then
And now you're a businesswoman. 16 years this restaurant has been open, and it's arguably the most famous seafood or
Well,
shellfish restaurant in
I
this
wouldn't
region.
want to say famous because I don't like that
no.
word.
Okay,
So,
the best- one of the
but
best known,
you
yeah.
know, I think thank God for small town. And first, when I take over the restaurant, I was very scared. Number one, because I don't think, you know how people say you put all your eggs in a basket. I don't even have any egg. Oh, Taylor take over the restaurant for me, and they just,
So it was a good business partnership.
well, they just let me go crazy, whatever. I still work for Taylor, but they take care of all the bill, and you know they pay me, and I still do a lot of different functions.
So this is just something else that they
Yeah,
have an enterprise
yeah,
with.
yeah.
Who are your customers?
I do have customers, some of the local, quite a bit, and also a lot of people all around different part of the country.
So the shellfish industry has been instrumental in your life.
I
from-
think for me, sometimes, I mean, I don't want to get emotional, but I feel I bless.
No, I would
you know.
agree. I would agree. A lot of people know this place. And
Yeah, because the seafood, but I get to know, people get to know me, and then because the way I'm cooking and make me feel happy and
well, and I think for the
and grateful, you know, for that too. So
Absolutely, and for the Shelton area too. You've been an economic boon, and you've helped a lot of people
Yeah,
bring business into this area.
yes,
So that's
I do try to do what I can for like different fundraising for different charity if I can do it, you know.
you do a lot for this area.
Yeah.
And Shelton downtown in particular. Well, Zin, thank you so much for talking with us today, and for what you do for the shellfish industry and using it on the restaurant end. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly. Looks excellent. Appreciate your sharing a little bit of it. We thank also a number of sponsors for making production of this program possible. Northwest Media Company, Elliott Bay Web Design, Dunright Handyman Services, FTEmagazine.com, and Mobility Hosting, and especially to Rainier Connect, the primary sponsor of today's episode. We'll be back again next week with another edition of South Sound Business Report. Hope you'll join us. Same time, same channel.